Some time ago, we wrote an article a while back where we argued that free speech means also protecting the speech of those you disagree with. Time to put our money where our mouths are. After the right-wing violence at Charlottesville, neo-Nazi website The Daily Stormer posted articles ridiculing the woman killed in Fields' terrorist attack. The backlash was intense and immediate and forced the site off the web. In doing so, it damaged free speech for us all. The people at the Daily Stormer are genuine scumbags. Unfortunately, though, the First Amendment guarantees free speech as much for scumbags as for anyone else. When website hosting services GoDaddy, Google, and Russia's RU Center refused to host the Daily Stormer, they trampled on those guarantees. Cloudflare joined in the fray by removing their protections against DDoS attacks, something every site needs to function. It may be hard to get worked up over a bunch of fascists losing their free speech, but now that we've made it okay to silence the Daily Stormer, we're effectively giving companies the right to decide what we can and can't say. On top of that, we got another, scarier example of free speech being policed this week. The U.S. Department of Justice formally requested that DreamHost hand over the IP addresses of over 1 million people who visited an anti-Trump protest site. It's feared these details could be used to identify left-wing activists and intimidate them into silence. Less than an hour after the events at Charlottesville, someone decided it was a great idea to push the idea that every state and city should remove Confederate flags and monuments. The problem here, this is history, our history, the very history that makes who we are good or bad. The reason the Confederate flags and monuments line the countryside, is of reminders of our lost brothers and sisters. We as Americans were supposed to look back on the history, to learn from that history and not to repeat it. Sadly, the people behind the removal of the Confederate flags and monuments, don't understand what reminders of history is meant to provide for us. As they have set off a chain of events that will end up very bad. For now, let's call it the domino effect. The United States is the most heavily armed nation in the world, and I am not talking about the military. Across the United States there are over 500 militia groups, each with 10,000 to 30,000 heavily armed civilians, ex-military and yes, even current military. Their job, just like the military, is to protect the American way of life. History is part of that way of life. To remove history from the American people, some would call un-American. Back to the militia groups. With so many groups, it has been estimated that over half of the United States population is part of some type of group. You have better odds of running into or knowing someone that is part of a group like this, than finding a penny on the ground. I honestly thought I would not see a battle between the states and its people in my lifetime, but I fear we are on the back of a civil war. You need to ask yourself which side you will take. Stay paranoid, my friends.
What we've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. So you get what we had here last week, which is the way he wants it. Well, he gets it.